Hey y'all, I'm Lauren and welcome to Cantina Cast. Today I am talking about The Edge of Balance Volume 2 written by Shima, Shinya, and Daniel Jose Older. I recently did a video talking about Volume 1 of this manga, and I also a while back did a video talking about The Edge of Balance Precedent, which came out during Phase 2. Something to remember about this manga series is that Volumes 1 and 2 came out during Phase 1, and then during Phase 2 of the High Republic was when the Edge of Balance Precedent came out. So the numbering system feels a little bit weird because we're used to number 2 being associated with Phase 2, but in this case it was Volumes 1 and 2 were actually in Phase 1. So the reason I'm going back and covering these two manga from Phase 1 is because Edge of Balance Volume 3 just came out on August 15th, which is a continuation of the same story that was established in these previous issues. Because I hadn't covered 1 and 2 in the past, even though I had covered the Edge of Balance Precedent, and I definitely felt like it was needed since this series has actually ended up being one of my favorite High Republic reads. The reason it's my favorite is because not only are the characters really easy to connect with and like, but something that I feel like is unique about this series is if you don't want to go through and read all of the High Republic stuff, I feel like you don't have to. To me, this series almost feels like its own self-contained kind of thing. Now, because of the references that we get to other events going on and other characters, you can still tell it's part of the High Republic, and it does still feel part of the bigger picture. But if you're looking for just a taste of the High Republic without having to commit to a whole bunch of stuff, then this manga might be a good option for that. You can still enjoy the series, you can still enjoy the High Republic without needing to know every little thing that goes on. There are references to events that happen in other books, so if you're the type of person that you really want that full context, then you're not going to get all of that context in this series. To me, the real draw of this series is the characters and seeing how they work through things. So I am going to be talking about spoilers in this video, so if you haven't read Volume 1 yet, or if you're thinking about reading Volume 2, then just be aware I am going to talk about plot details going forward. In Volume 2, we do, of course, get a continuation of that previous story from Volume 1. It does feel very much like we picked up right where we left off. We do open with a Nihil meeting, so in this issue, we are seeing a little bit more of the perspective of the Nihil, although we still don't get a ton quite yet. But Mr. Zaret is there. And at the end of Volume 1, we learned that Mr. Zaret is the one who was responsible for the Dren gear making it to Banshee. So we knew Mr. Zaret was affiliated with the Nihil in some way. The specifics of that weren't really established with a lot of detail in Volume 1. But in Volume 2, we do see him actually at this meeting. So it looks like he himself is a Nihil. During this meeting, we learned that Marchion Ro is not finished with Banshee yet, and he wants all of the Jedi temples to be destroyed, which does include the one on Banshee. So it sounds like another attack on Banshee is going to be coming any day now. Meanwhile, on Banshee, we do have Lily, who, of course, she is Arkoff's former Padawan. She is still on Banshee with everybody else, even though Arkoff is still kind of off doing his own thing right now, and she's really trying to make sure that everybody is ready for another attack. She's feeling really kind of pressured and freaked out right now. She's afraid that she's not going to be able to successfully hold down the fort while Arkoff is gone, and that she's not going to live up to the precedent that he set for her. One thing that was mentioned a couple times in Volume 1 is that Lily wanted to surpass Arkoff, meaning that she wanted to be a more powerful and successful Jedi than he was, which is a good thing because, of course, Arkoff should want that for his student. And as I mentioned in my last video, I really liked the way that this was discussed in Part 1, but even though it's something that's a goal of hers, she does have this deep down fear that she's not going to actually be able to do that. She has a lot of stress and kind of like second guessing herself at this time because of that. And she also says something similar to her own Padawan, Kieran, who is also on Banshee. When they're discussing their plans for Banshee and what they need to do, one thing that she says to him is, "I know that you will surpass me someday." While they are doing all of this, we do have Sav Malagin show up. We did meet this character also in the Edge of Balance Precedent, so if you read that manga, she looks very familiar. She does things a little little bit differently than Lily does. She gets there to check in on them, so she says, but she also brought a bunch of weapons. We later find out that there was recently an attack, a Nihil attack on a nearby planet. So she's brought weapons. She's come to help them, even though Lily is really doing the best that she can. We do see that there's some things that Lily hasn't quite thought of yet that Sav knows how to do. You also get the sense that Sav has probably seen a lot of action and that this is not her first time doing something like this, because she just seems like she just knows what is needed, kind of just in an automatic way, in a way that Lily doesn't. And that's not really a critique on Lily's part. It's just that Sav is just, she seems like she just has a lot more experience, which I guess makes sense because you can tell that she's an older, much more established Jedi. She does keep warning Lily, don't be too rigid with your preparations, because even though Lily is doing everything that she thinks she needs to be doing and she's really dedicated to this, she's not very flexible either. She seems to have a picture in her mind of how exactly things are going to go down, and she doesn't really seem willing to consider a lot of alternatives or consider like a plan B or anything like that. And so Sav is really trying to encourage her to not fall into that, because that can lead to trouble. During all of this conversation, there's actually a random bomb that goes off in one of the bunkers that they're currently building. And so this is when Lily realizes she needs to go to Starlight and actually talk to Arkoff, and she needs to get some more intel on what exactly to expect. And the reason that she has to actually leave to get the intel is because there's some issues with the comms on their planet, which definitely seems a little bit fishy. But right now, her priority is to actually talk to Arkoff more so than figure out what's going on with the comms. She does get to Starlight and finds Arkoff and Stellan Geos. She gives them an update on what's going on, and they pretty much confirmed what was already expected, which is that more attacks are definitely coming. And those attacks are coming sooner than Lily thinks, because once she leaves Starlight and actually goes back to Banshee, there's literally an attack happening like as she pulls in. And one thing that Sav warned Lily about when she first arrived was that you need to be prepared to give up the temple if you need to. Like, if it turns out that that's the best thing for your people and for everybody on Banshee, you need to get okay with giving up the temple. And so this is a point of tension during this fight, is that they're defending the temple. The temple is a huge asset. They don't want to give it up. But of course, the Nihil's main objective is they want to get in the temple. And it seems like they're actually looking for something. One thing I loved about this scene is that we learn that Sav, she really does not seem very shy about killing people. And I know that that sounds messed up, but the reason I say that is because some of the Jedi during the High Republic drive me so crazy with them not wanting to commit violence of any kind, that it's like, oh my gosh, please just do something. And I love it that Sav is just like so willing to do what needs to be done, even if it goes against like what's technically the Jedi way. She will do what is best for the situation and for the people involved. And if that doesn't look pretty or good, and if it's a questionable decision, if it's still the best decision, she will do it with no regrets. At least that's how it appears in this volume. So I love that about her character. So that had me super excited. At one point during this battle, Kieran, Lily's Padawan, and some of the younglings and Sav, they're all in the forest, and they end up having a confrontation with some Nihil there. And I mean like a direct confrontation. And Mr. Zaret is with them as well. And unfortunately, during this, Mr. Zaret shoots and kills Kieran. Lily feels it in the forest when this happens, and she does manage to go find where they are, and she finds Kieran's deceased body, and she also finds Sav there as well. And this is something that is really hard on Lily, because of course her biggest hope was that Kieran would become a better Jedi than she is, and she really had so much hope and faith that this is something that would happen, and unfortunately he didn't ever get the chance to do that. Sav still manages to encourage Lily that your work isn't done yet, you need to keep going. And she also discusses with Lily the fact that the Nihil seem like they're looking for something in the temple. And the impression that I got from Sav in this scene is that she's not saying don't be sad about Kieran, but she is still very focused on do what needs to be done in the situation. So still focus on your objective, which is defeating the Nihil and not letting them find whatever it is they seem to be trying to find in the temple. This conversation does have an impact on Lily, and so even though she's absolutely devastated about Kieran, she does still manage to do what needs to be done in this particular situation. She goes back, she has the temple fully evacuated, and then she actually destroys the whole temple. And so this is a huge moment of growth for Lily because earlier in the story, she was very, very against letting the Nihil have the temple or anything happening to the temple because, of course, she feels that as a Jedi, that should be her objective is protecting the temple. But Sav had to show her that that's not always necessarily the case. It really does depend on what needs to be done, and you need to be willing to do what needs to be done. And so Sav having those conversations with Lily throughout the story and also leading by example really helped Lily kind of get past this whole kind of do what the Jedi is supposed to do thing and actually literally do what she's supposed to do by destroying the temple when it became evident that that really was the best course of action rather than trying to protect the temple and ultimately getting it taken away anyway. And the reason she completely destroys it is because they have managed to put it together that whatever the Nihil are looking for that's in the temple, it's obviously incredibly important. Seems like it would be an advantage for them to find because they sure are going through a lot of trouble looking for it. And so she's like, it's going to be better to just destroy the temple and ultimately destroy whatever they're looking for rather than let them potentially take it. So that's what she ends up doing. So unfortunately, the settlement on Banshee is destroyed, and at the same time, they receive a transmission that Starlight Beacon has fallen. So it is very bleak at this point, and Lily and everybody on Banshee, I mean, they've just lost Kieran, they've just lost the settlement that they worked so hard to build. They just lost the Jedi Temple, and now we find out that Starlight Beacon has fallen as well. And the Jedi are called back to Coruscant, of course, which, if you've been following other High Republic stuff, you know that that is what happened is everybody had to leave their post and go regroup on Coruscant for further instruction. We find out that Lily and Sav, they are some of the Jedi that refused the call. We do know that in the High Republic, there was a handful of Jedi that did not go back to Coruscant, even though it was technically disobeying orders. They had their own personal reasons for doing so. And in this particular case, Lily and Sav, they both felt like what was needed was for them to stay on Banshee and protect Banshee. And that is what they decided to do, is to disobey orders and do what they truly believed the Force was actually leading them to do rather than following like the sort of like bureaucratic instruction that they received. We do also see a cameo of the indigenous people on this planet who are like this little bird-like species that are super cute. At the end of volume 1, we did get a bonus story where we saw Lily and the younglings learning how to work with these people and kind of cohabitate in harmony. So it was cool to see a little callback to that when we get to see Lily still working with them again in the aftermath of the attack on Banshee. These people do very much remind me of the Ewoks in that way, that even though they have a very different type of society that what Lily comes from, Lily and the Bansheeans, they do seem like they get along pretty well, and that maybe they'll work together on something in volume 3. And of course, at the end of this issue, as I feel like is kind of common with High Republic stories, we do get a little teaser that Marchion Ro is coming, unfortunately. So we'll probably see what comes of that in volume 3 with, because it definitely seems like he has a specific objective on Banshee that he's not going to just forget about. I'm really excited to talk about volume 3 next. I love the cover of volume 3 with Arkoff on it, so I'm really excited to be picking up with his story. He definitely was probably one of the highlights of this series for me. Even though we don't see Arkoff very much in volume 2, I really loved him in volume 1 and in The Edge of Balance Precedent especially. So I can't wait to pick up with this character in volume 3. I'm also really interested to see what's next for Lily because it feels like in volume 2, her character had a lot of her priorities change. She lost her Padawan. She had to learn how to not be so rigid, even though In a lot of cases, she seems to believe that being rigid was kind of the Jedi way until Sav showed her otherwise. And she had a big transformative moment when she ultimately had to decide to destroy the temple, even though it totally went against what she had previously believed was the right thing to do. I also hope we get to see more of Sav in volume 3 as well, just because I love her attitude about doing what needs to be done. Those types of characters that are just willing to do the ugly thing if it's the best thing for everybody involved. Those types of characters I always love. So keep an eye out for my next video when I'm going to be covering volume 3 of this series. And thanks so much for joining y'all. I hope that y'all have a great rest of your day. Bye guys.